Now is someone who knows Capitol Hill well, Republican strategist Maura Gillespie, founder and principal of Blue Stack Strategies and former deputy chief of staff to former Republican Congressmember Adam Kinzinger. Maura, thanks so much for being on ITI with us tonight. Really appreciate having you here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, the calculus around this is so interesting. This weekend, finally, the House approves this $95 billion aid package in part to Ukraine. And Speaker Johnson had to back off this demand he had for so long about there being that border funding as part of it. Just take us into what you see as Speaker Johnson's calculus around this.
You know, it was unfortunate that they backed off of their effort that Senator Langford had put together. He had put together a pretty comprehensive piece of legislation working across the aisle with the White House and with leadership to get this bill that had, contingencies about the border attached to any additional aid for Ukraine. But as you may know, and as the watchers may know, President Trump basically told Johnson that that was not going to happen and not to do it, and put the kibosh on it, and then bragged about being able to stifle that effort. So back to the drawing board it went, and this effort, and I think honestly what Speaker Mike Johnson did here was, by breaking it up into four separate pieces, this aid, he allowed his members to vote their conscience. So he gave them cover, protected them, but also moved the ball forward because this needed to get done. And he realized that after having intelligence briefings and seeing, the full scope of what America's role is in the world and the impact that our aid can do to deter someone like Vladimir Putin. So it was really an important strategic move by the speaker, and I'm glad to see he's come into his own here in this way.
This may not be a binary, but you got to wonder, is Speaker Johnson stronger or weaker for having done this? And I say that because, as you mentioned, Senator Langford from Oklahoma had this Senate bill that would have given Speaker Johnson all the things that Republicans would have wanted, but not for President Trump stepping in and kiboshing the whole situation. And now Johnson gets across a thing, much to the chagrin of many people in his party, that doesn't even have the thing that they wanted in the first place. So net, does Johnson come out better or worse for having listened to Trump in the first place?
I actually think he comes across better because while myself as a citizen and who wants to see things get done, I think for Republicans who are following the Trump playbook, this is good for them because they can still complain about having nothing done on the border. So they can still campaign on that issue up until beyond Election Day. So they can really hone in on that message by saying that nothing's being done on the border and continue to beat that drum and don't have to really deal with it because it's easier to complain than it is to lead. And in this way, they both kind of win because they get to complain about that, but they also got the aid done that was necessary, because giving foreign aid is not just for our allies' benefit, it's for our benefit as well.
It's absolutely true. But of course, now Speaker Johnson is facing some rebellion within his own caucus. Marjorie Taylor Greene threatening this vote to oust. I mean, she's already filed the motion. The vote could come, and it's a very slim majority, as you know, down to essentially functionally one vote. Marjorie Taylor Greene, there's also Thomas Massey of Kentucky, Paul Gosar of Arizona, all saying, yeah, they'd be on board. Just take us into what we're seeing, what could be yet another motion to vacate.
And this is another, downside of what Kevin McCarthy had given in order to get the gavel in the first place, by allowing it to be just one member who can bring up this vote to vacate the chair. But prior to that, there will be a procedural motion, and it's the motion to table the motion to vacate the chair. A little nerdy nuance there on Capitol Hill, but what the motion to table is saying, this motion doesn't get to go to the floor. So if enough members were to vote for that, that's a positive step for Mike Johnson. And I think we've already heard from a few Democrats who have said that they would vote in favor. Tom Suozzi out of New York and a few others have said that they would vote to table the motion to vacate should Marjorie Taylor Greene or Massey bring it up. So that's a positive for Johnson in terms of keeping the gavel and for the institution, because we really, don't want to see the House go through another marathon of votes that, to not be able to elect a speaker. It's not good for the country, for sure.
Now, the flip side of that, of course, is that in order for Speaker Johnson to hold on to his speakership, he has to, as you say, rely on some Republican votes. And that gives power to Hakeem Jeffries as the minority leader, because now he's got Speaker Johnson to some degree politically in his pocket. Talk to us about the calculus of ceding that kind of power.
The reality is that the Republicans have to work across the aisle to get things done. They don't have as much power as they think they do in Congress, but you're against a Democratic majority in the Senate. a Democrat in the White House, and you're now down to 1 to 2 votes as a majority in the House. So it's not really the ability to wield the power that they think they can. And for so many on the far right who think that they can because they have the gavel, that's not how this works. And so I think that there's going to be a nice learning curve for a lot of members if it's not already been happening. So he's going to have to rely on Hakeem Jeffries to, and he'll be able to, because there's a better relationship there than there was between McCarthy and Jeffries. I think this weekend has shown you that, Speaker Johnson's going through with good faith efforts. He's doing the right things for the right reasons. And Democrats across the aisle who want to get things done and show that they can also legislate, this is a positive step for them because they see a good faith effort there.
More before I let you go, I just want to talk to you about this NBC News polling that came out recently that shows some interesting news for former President Trump and Biden when it comes to these third-party candidates, Cornel West, RFK Jr., Jill Stein. You factor them in. The polling shifts a bit, and it shows that these third-party candidates seem to be taking more votes from Trump than from Biden. There's a lot of reason to think that it would have been the other way around. How are Republicans looking at the threat of third parties? And obviously outside of that third-party race, it's really close head-to-head, as we know. But the third-party candidates seem to change things a bit.
Absolutely. And I think up until this poll, I would say, Republicans, and especially coming from the top down with former President Trump, have largely been seeing RFK Jr. as a benefit to them. They saw it as taking votes away from Biden. But in reality, I have friends who, from both sides of the political spectrum, who are looking to vote for RFK Jr. So I think that they've got to recalculate about their ability to reach out to those voters and convince them back to their side. Right now, they're kind of banking on the fact that they think those voters are from Biden's voters. But, the reality is that there are a lot of people who are unhappy with the two choices and they're looking for an alternative. And if you're a Trump voter and, you're not trusting of the government and you're not trusting of what's going on right now, information sharing, then RFK Jr. is going to be your pick, and that's coming from a Trump voter. So I think that there is a lot of work to do from both sides of the campaign to convince those voters that they need to convince voters that they need to pull to their sides. Otherwise, you're going to see a lot of write-ins, and like this poll showed you, third-party candidates.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the major parties educating about themselves, but also trying to do some educating about what those third parties really stand for and see which way the votes fall down at the end of it all. Maura Gillespie, thank you so much for propping us up with a lot of intel and inside information when it comes from a Republican perspective. I appreciate you having you here.